Here we are with our M13 pack and opening up a nice Planeswalker to start off with. I think it's a pretty clear pick. There's Murder, Sleep and Rancor, so everything but red has nice cards in this pack, but Ajani is clearly the best option for us, and hopefully we can draft a sweet deck around the Planeswalker. Slumbering Dragon is interesting. It always looks very threatening on the opponent's side of the board, but when you're playing it yourself, you notice that it just doesn't do very much at the beginning, at least. But I've also won some games with it, so it's a truly a high variance card. Here, I think Ajani Stun Striker is a legitimate option after starting off with an Ajani, which makes us want to stick to white as much as possible. And I don't like any of the rares or uncommons enough, and the power level of the commons is really mediocre, so I don't see a reason to pick up something like Duskmantle Prowler when I can just try to stay to my colors. Now, the white keeps flowing at least a little bit, even though we are only seeing one card per booster, but Attendant Knight is actually quite fine. It enables the War Falcon, and it's really great against small ground creatures, which a lot of people play. So we are shipping second Sleep if we are going for the Knight, Scroll Thief, but once again a pack that's not really great, so I'm going to go with the strategy of sticking with the white cards and hoping that we can either get some good signals or open a good card in pack 2. And this priced elephant here kind of means that our second color would have to be green to make it effective, but it is still a white card and a white signal if we pass it. So Plummet, Bloodhunter, Bad Goblin Arsonist, and Essence Scatter are probably the next best cards in this pack. I like Essence Scatter, but our deck isn't looking like a typical Essence Scatter deck. Also, I like to have a more evasive build if I want to go blue-white tempo. So I think there's not enough power here to justify not taking the elephant. Bloodhunter Bet probably comes closest, and Black-White Exalted is a nice deck, but we haven't gotten any black signals yet, so let's postpone the decision which colors we are going to play. And this is also not very spectacular. There's another Force Mage, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I can continue cutting white as much as possible by picking up a Wall Falcon. I do have a Knight already, which comes with the Soldier token, so the Wall Falcon might actually be the best card for here for me. Once again, not really a reason to go into another color, but also nothing I have to worry about passing to my neighbors. And as long as the white keeps coming, I really don't see a reason to go off color for anything around a 6-pick card. So here I'm going to go for the Benediction. Captain's Call is an alternative. It does bring soldiers into play and has nice synergy with Crusader of Ardrick and to a lesser extent Griffin Protector. But I think in the games where Benediction is good, it's actually really great. Also, usually you don't have that much trouble picking up Captain's Call if you want. Here there's Battleflight Eagle in white and Phyrexian Hulk as a colorless option. The best card in the pack is Blade Tusk Boar in my opinion, which isn't green, but would still make for a good card in this deck. I don't really like that we are only drafting creatures and creature enhancements basically, but so far the packs haven't really shown us anything. This might be wrong, but I'm still going to stick to Battleflight Eagle with the plan of just keeping my options open. I think that Blade Tusk Boar is significantly stronger, but my chances of ending up red are only about, I don't know, 1/3 maybe. So I like what Battleflight Eagle adds to my deck better than 1/3 of a chance of playing the boar. And with that reasoning, I think we're going to continue drafting white cards in this pack only, and then see where it leads us. With a start like this, you really hope for some white rings, but of course we don't know if that's going to happen. I like the elixir very much against the mill deck. Of course it doesn't really have any other uses, so Divine Favor, not really a card I like to play in this format, so I think I'm going to pick this as a sideboard card. And Duskmantle Prowler Wield, which is interesting. I don't think it's that great, but it's certainly not a bad card. And our early packs weren't that strong to begin with, so the strongest cards here are Chandra's Fury and the Prowler, and I think the Prowler might be a signal which we could use. Volcanic Strength or Guardian Lions. Guardian Lions, a sideboard card at best. Volcanic Strength, sometimes in the main deck, but usually in the aggressive red decks. Not looking like we are going that way, but I don't really need a Guardian Lion, so. This is interesting. Dark Favor or Naturalize. Dark Favor actually maybe in my colors. Naturalize could be good against me, but people that try to get some ways to deal with enchantments and artifacts usually get them, so I'm not that interested in hate drafting. Now, Pressed Elephant is only good if I play forests, but that doesn't mean I need a Naturalize for that if that happens. Now, Intrepid Hero is great, but Sarah Angel is probably just more consistent. I like the hero a lot if you have a couple of ways to increase the power of your opponent's creatures. So, for example, Ajani, Dark Favor, and Battleflight Eagle all work on opponent's creatures as well, which means that the hero can take out many more creatures than you'd think. However, Sarah Angel just seems like the safer pick. That's going to be great in all the matchups I play. My lack of 5-drops is also another reason to just go with the limited defining outcome here. Kind of sad. I really would like to try to draft the hero in a deck that's aimed at beating down, maybe with Exalted, but can also use some of its tricks to kill opponent's creatures. Sarah Angel better than taking a murder here, I think, and it's a white card, so sadly this is the wrong ring, the red one. Mock Flunky is one of the better cards in the format. Volcanic Gazer also very interesting, but the question is now, do I pick up a rather weak white card, which I'm not planning to? Do I go for the Geyser, which has the heavier color requirement, or do I just take Essence Drain as a black removal spell in a color where I have picked up some playables? Maybe not the greatest cards, but certainly not the worst. Also, black-white lending itself to some more of an Exalted theme. Yeah, I think the arguments for Essence Drain just way heavier than those for the Gazer, and the double red really not something that my almost mono white deck is looking for. And there's a Knight of Glory, which is most likely our pick here. Better than Giant Scorpion. Bloodhunter Bat is okay, but the few 2-drops that you play should have the highest impact possible, and Knight of Glory certainly qualifies and works great with our deck. So I like the 2-drop better here. Maybe even wheeling some of these Falcons that are going around. And there's a Ring of Thune. And if that's not a Ring of Thune deck, then I don't know what kind of deck is. So yeah, let's go with that. Another Attendant Knight. I'll gladly play a couple of these. And no reason to pick up another color here. But at some point we are going to have to decide what's happening here. So if we hide the Volcanic Strength, then we see that the black cards are Well, there's basically only one good black card in Essence Drain, but we could fit some more into our deck, especially if the Dark Favor happens to be good in our deck. I like it on Attended Knight. It's not that good on Knight of Glory though. So I think we go with Crippling Blight here. Even though Mug Raider and Turnus are stronger, we aren't going to have mountains and swamps for the Mug Raider, and picking a double red removal spell is just not reasonable, with a similar argument to the pick where we decided on Essence Drain rather than Volcanic Gazer. And another Sunstriker, much better than Cower and Fear, not only for mana reasons, but also for our strategic direction. And that's a very late Griffin Protector, which has to be better than a second Crippling Blight. And it seems like our deck is coming along quite nicely. I'm going to pick up the Tormented Soul here. And with 2 Divine Favors, we might actually play it. If we somehow don't get enough stronger cards. But even in the Exalted decks, I don't think that Tormented Soul is that great, because it's usually not that relevant to have another small creature to attack with, because your Exalted creatures also already serve the same purpose. Here you could argue for Hate Drafting Divination, but there might be matchups where I want another 4/3 for 5, which isn't the worst deal in the world. That's a very late Reckless Brute. The question is if Kite Sail is the card I'd rather want, but with Dark Favors and Benedictions and Ajani, I don't really want another creature dependent card. So let's do it like that. We can pick up a sideboard card here. Probably get a basic now, and then we can see what the last pack has to offer. And the answer is nothing, basically. The Goliath, not something we're interested in. Primal Clay is playable, and, well, it's never awful, but it's just not what we need. I think Wall Falcon is probably our best pick here. We do have a couple of cards that enable it, and I don't see a reason to pick up Searing Spear or anything else. Now, yeah, the quality of the packs isn't really exciting. I'm not going to pick a Walking Corpse. That's just not what my deck wants to do. So it almost feels like I should be hate drafting here. It's not like Rain of Blades, Faith's Reward, and Divine Favor are cards I want in my deck. So yeah, it's either Walking Corpse or taking out one of the stronger cards, either Flinthoof Boar or Prey Upon, I guess. Now, yeah, I'm actually just going to take out Prey Upon. I don't really like to play against it. It always kills my 4-drops, and it's just miserable. Now, I don't know what's going on. It's possible that black is being drafted to our right, but we did get quite a lot of white cards. Now, it's possible that the person or persons to our right were taking white cards out of the packs, and we just got the one card that was left. But I was feeling quite confident in getting some more high quality white cards in the third pack, which, well, the opposite is happening. So here once again it's either a Grizzly Bear 2-drop or hate drafting something out of a pack that's good for well, everybody else. So I think I'm going with a pack leader here. Who knows, maybe I pick up an Evolving Wilds and splash a forest. It's certainly not impossible, even though it's very unlikely. Now, Mark of the Vampire is a card I've grown to like quite a bit. Of course, if I'm going to play 2 Dark Favors and I have the life linkers to go with it anyway, then the mark becomes less important. The alternative in my colors is Diabolic Revelation, which I like in extreme control decks, but even then it's quite expensive. You want to cast it for 7 to be reasonable and for 8 to be good. So I think Mark is much better. Bloodthorn Vampire is almost unplayable, and this is also not the right deck for the Tomb. With a similar reasoning, why the Diabolic Revelation is not the right card for this deck. Here we have the option between Glorious Charge, Ravenous Rats, and maybe a hard to cast Sign in Blood. Yeah, this third pack is just abysmal, but thankfully we did manage to pick up some stronger cards during pack 1 and 2. I could also pick up a Phyrexian Hulk if I do want to play a 6-drop in this deck. That might actually be more reasonable than going for a weak combo trick or a black card I don't really want. Now that's at least something. We have the option between War Priest of Thune and Divine Verdict. I like the Verdict quite a bit. War Priest, of course, it's great if you have a target, but that doesn't always happen. I think I'm going with the Verdict here. Some more removal is certainly not a bad thing. And I kind of like Safe Passage. It doesn't protect Planeswalkers, but you can usually do something good with it if it's countering a removal spell or an all-out attack of your opponent, or just allowing you to attack with all your creatures. And I think it's generally better than having a Mind Rot. I'm going to go for the third Attendant Knight. I don't want a third Dark Favor, and that's certainly going to be in the deck. Spike Bailoff is actually not that great against me with all my 2/2 first strike guys. But yeah, so Torch Fiend kills my Ring of Thune, so I think we can take that out. Now this is the time where we can pick up a 2-drop, I guess. Divine Favor, not something we need. And Rain of Blades I've never seen be good before. We do have all the first strike, but that's already pretty good if we manage to get that down. And we are back to taking out some cards our neighbors could use, maybe. And the green splash isn't happening, so we can already start thinking about how our deck is going to look like. Of course, the War Falcons need some help to be able to attack, but they're going to make for some of our stronger swords. And I think what we are going to try to do is just build a deck that abuses Dark Favor to the maximum, and then fill out the rest of the deck with creatures and some removal spells. So let's see what we have to work with. Yeah, let's just get everything in here. Then we can start taking out what we don't want. Pressed Elephant, Pillarfeet Oxen, not that exciting. Maybe the Elephant makes it in, but hopefully we can find something better. And what we have to keep in mind is that we have a Ring of Thune, which makes white creatures better than black creatures in general, but most of our creatures are white to begin with. So I don't really like the anti-synergy of Wall Falcon and Dark Favor if you don't have a creature to enable the Falcon. It's really doesn't help to have a nice curve of 1 and 2 drop there, but I think that's actually fine. Now I feel like we want to play this deck as aggressive as possible, which means that first of all we are going to have to get rid of some of the late game cards and the higher end of the curve. Our enchantments and the ring should hopefully carry our low drops into a region where they can compete with the higher drops, and cards like Energetic Benediction and our a few of our removal spells should help as well. Now I think if you are going for this kind of strategy, we could actually take out removal spells like Crippling Blight and just focus on the early game creatures instead. If we cut enough late game cards, we might actually be able to go down to 16 land if we really want to do so. Now, Crippling Bite is insane against Fogbank, but the question is if it's going to be a sideboard card or a main deck card. Now, I like Battleflight Eagle better than Zombie Goliath, and the Hulk doesn't seem like it belongs into this deck. And Priced Elephant is just a hill giant at this point. So I'm not that interested in running the Guardians, but they are a soldier for the War Falcon, and the Exalted ability is going to be relevant in some of the games. So I'm not going to cut it, but it's certainly a possibility that even in a dedicated Exalted deck, Guardians of Akraza might not be your best choice, simply because you run into the danger of your opponent handling your threats, and you're left with the Guardians, which is still a problem here. I have the Dark Favors, the Ring, and Ajani, and then every defender is going to be a problem in a certain way. But on the other hand, I do have 3 Attendant Knights that also give me additional creatures to work with, so I'm not too concerned about that. Now, from a power level point of view, I think Safe Passage is probably the weakest of my spells, and Mark of the Vampire is the most replaceable one. I do have the 3 other options of pumping creatures, and they might be the Sunstrikers to also give me some life back. But if everything goes according to plan, I'm actually not going to be in a danger of losing a race with this kind of deck. If I am, then things are going kind of bad anyway, and then Mark of the Vampire is only going to be good on an evasive creature, which I do have some, but they should pose a problem for the opponent without me playing Mark of the Vampire. Now, I think I'm going to cut it. I like the Dark Favors better. They cost less mana. They are better on Sunstriker, I believe. Better on Attendant Knight. And yeah, we can board in the Mark if we feel like our opponent is weak against auras, and the lifelink is going to be important. Now, the decision here, I believe, is either keeping in Safe Passage or playing one of the creatures instead, because I certainly want to stick with 17 lands. Now that I look at this, I think our late game isn't too strong, but we have a Ajani and a Sarah Angel, and quite some ways to also draw ourselves out of a mid game stumble. And what Safe Passage does, what no other card does, is it allows me to raise unraceable situations while also protecting my suited up guys from removal spells. It's not particularly good against Turn to Slag if we have an equipped creature, but against everything else it is, and it also helps against Green's Death Touch creatures, for example. So overall, I think Safe Passage belongs in this deck. Hopefully we can get our opponents to run into it sometimes. And the remaining question is if this is an 11/6 mana base or if we should go for 10/7. Now, if we cut the Walking Corpse, it's certainly reasonable to only play 6. The Tormented Soul is kind of bad because the chances to drop it on turn 1 get lower and lower, but having a turn 2 Ajani Sunstriker is actually very potent and very important, so I would like to have the extra planes at that point. Now, I'm looking at options to replace Walking Corpse with, and it would have to be either Crippling Blight, which is also black, or one of the more expensive creatures. And of course, for Zombie Goliath, it doesn't really matter that it's black, because on turn 5 we are much more likely to have drawn a swamp. Given that my late game isn't too great, and I'm not going to put Dark Favor on a Walking Corpse just to see it get blocked. I think we cut this rather weak card for a card that's slightly better in the late game. Gives us a fighting chance to play a prolonged game. And makes our mana base a little bit better. So I hope that this works out as planned. See you in round 1.